A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Super Foam Flying on HJN. And today, here we got ourselves something a little different right here. Something, of course, that honestly, I can't really be sure exactly how to comment on this one, other than just say, it's not only a reskin, but yet it somehow seems to be better, just because it's different. This is the Ultra 13. It might say Focus up here, but truthfully speaking, I've known the Ultra line since day one. And the fact that this came out within 2 full years of the lineup first beginning to set out their own products, I tell ya, Hasbro sure had made a lot of progress since the Ultra 1 gave us a rather unsightly debut to this series. But being that this series has come very far since then, unleashing a whole new kind of dart with a whole new kind of proprietary system and some more powerful internals in contrast to the Elite or Mega line or even the Rival line, it's fair to say that the 13 does in fact happen to provide quite a bit more with less. Because, first of all, this is basically the Ultra 10, if you remember back when I talked about the AMP, if you will. The Ultra 10, or the AMP, pretty much, was basically a blaster that did in fact have its own clip system. Well, of course this one's different, but if you just look at the blaster itself without anything else, it's basically nothing more than a somewhat different Ultra 10. The 13 is basically just a few blasters ahead of it. But it also does have its own sort of color scheme, with some red as a way to accent the white, orange, and black, as opposed to what we've seen before then. Because the majority of Ultra blasters, if you don't remember from other reviews I've done, like the Ultra 4 for example, typically this placard which says Ultra on both sides, one side has it painted with metallic gold, but in this case, it's not gold. It is in fact a more ruby red, pretty much. Not to mention some specialized decals alongside with the name printed right here on this side. But just like every other Ultra Blaster, the left side shows little more than a similar placard saying Ultra, but without the metallic stuff and all the other amazing stuff. It's only printed on one side, pretty much. Which, I mean, who even knows what Hasbro could do with this series? Because I'd say, at their best, throughout most of 2020, with blasters including the 3 and the 5, as well as the 9, or the Pharaoh, then there's pretty much a lot more than we could potentially expect from this lineup as the years go on. And I do in fact want to talk more about the Ultra series, but at this very moment, the Ultra 13 was pretty much the latest that we've gotten at the time. If you look down the barrel even, it does also have a very peculiar sort of shape to it. It kind of reminds me of how another Ultra blaster that I still own, which is the 12, you see over here, it does have its own unique sort of muzzle sort of appearance when you look down it from the front without any darts. But of all blasters released in 2021 from the Ultra line, this one might as well be the best. I don't really know exactly what else I can say about that, because talking about such a horrible year like that really does have quite a number of different things that are specifically worth mentioning. But yet, this is just an Ultra 10 with a slightly different color scheme and all that. However, to make it even more different than the 10, therefore better than the 10, this is basically the first ever Ultra Blaster that has its own modular attachment. It comes with its own stock, and it's not necessarily made to be an exclusive to Ultra Blasters, because truthfully speaking, here we have the Echo, pretty much, from the Super line. And if I can get it to go in just right. Well, doesn't really want to go in on this one, mostly because of how big this part is. So let's find a different one here. Scavenger. That'll pretty much do, but so as you can see, the 13 stock attachment can fit on other blasters, depending on what they are, pretty much. With blasters that have a long back end like the Echo CS10, it's probably not possible, but on the Scavenger, even though it's not recommended, it can in fact be done. It's also important to note that apart from being the first ever Ultra Blaster to include its own attachment, it also comes with a 10 dart Ultra magazine, which is like what we've seen in both the 9 and the 12 over here, pretty much. But unlike the 9, where it's basically smoke, transparent smoke color on one side, opaque gold on the other side, and unlike the majority of other Ultra magazines that we've seen, this one is in fact fully red, opaque red, to match up with that of the red accenting on the color scheme of the blaster itself. This blaster also includes 10 of its very own pinpointer darts, which, if you remember, they also came along with the Ultra 12. So, apart from having a 10 dart Ultra magazine with 10 pinpointer darts, a feat that the Ultra 12 had accomplished earlier in the year 2021, the Ultra 13, I'd say, sure does have quite a bit of a kicks to try and be better than most other Ultra Blasters thus far, but it's probably so, but maybe not by a whole lot, because first of all, this is basically all we get here. We got an Ultra 10 with a slightly different color scheme, with red being the most apparent notable change on here, a fully red Ultra magazine with pinpointer darts included, as well as a stock attachment that even can hold an Ultra magazine like so. So if you ever got 2 magazines on you, you can easily swap it out in case you run out of ammo, and you're pretty much good to go. And then so when firing this blaster, I could sure tell you that it is it's pretty smooth in terms of motorized action, flywheels and all that, which, albeit still requires 6 AA batteries to operate, and has a similar sort of process when loading the batteries inside the battery compartment, which, like the 10, can be found on this side. So, overall, I'd say for a bit of a reskin with the 10, in the same way that the 11 was pretty much a reskin of the 8, the 13 actually does seem like a very good blaster, not only for being the first to include its own modular attachment, and also the second to include pinpointer darts, which I really gotta be honest here, Nerf had basically decided to stop calling them those, eventually. And when we are getting refill packs with these darts, they're literally calling them Ultra AccuStrike darts. And might I ask why? Why would you need to associate Ultra with AccuStrike now? They're the pinpointer darts. It said so right on the box of the Ultra 12. So anyways, I guess I don't have too much else left to comment on this one here. I mean, what could I say? It's an Ultra 10. The same exact thing when it comes to functionality and looks. A permanent grip, a permanent red dot holographic sight, none of which you can take off, kind of like with the Ultra 9 where it had a permanent scope. Then of course you have a jam door, 1 tactical rail on top, and then of course the stock adapter. So, but this one comes with its own stock, unlike the 10, which might only seem better, but it only goes so far. But hey, at least I do like what Hasbro has actually pulled off here. They made the first ever Ultra Blaster to include its own sort of exclusive attachment that is in fact compatible, but not with all blasters, unfortunately, like what we just saw here. So, to summarize, the Ultra 13, the 13th blaster officially released in the Ultra line, is certainly quite a big upgrade over the 10, which I've already covered on before this series, but overall, it's probably nothing too much of an improvement other than a different color scheme including its own pinpointer darts, including its own stock, and a larger clip. So, I guess there's not really too much that I could say otherwise about this blaster, except for the fact that, well, maybe Hasbro will have more stuff coming in the future. And maybe then I might get the chance to talk about some more stuff related to this whole entire lineup itself. But the truth is, well, this series will actually be coming to a close pretty soon. So if you want to see more, go down to my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.